On the morning of October 29th, after a 23-hour-long flight, U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in Malaysia, marking the first stop of a strategically significant trip to Asia. At the airport, he received a high-level welcome from Malaysian officials. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim personally greeted him and rolled out the red carpet. People at the scene sang and danced to celebrate his arrival. After such a long flight, Trump showed no signs of fatigue. The moment he stepped off the plane, he joined the lively crowd, dancing to the cheerful music. The atmosphere was festive and full of energy. This 5-day trip is not just a series of state visits. It's more like a carefully planned strategic mission. The main goal is to reset America's trade terms with major Asian economies through bilateral talks, strengthen key supply chain security, and secure the most favorable strategic position for the U.S. in its confrontation with the Chinese Communist Party. The trip spans both Southeast and Northeast Asia, covering 2 major multilateral meetings, the ASEAN Summit and the APEC Leader Summit. But at its core, it's really a chain of interconnected bilateral negotiations. From Kuala Lumpur to Tokyo and then to Gyeongju, every stop is designed to build towards the next, leading up to the final highlight, Trump's meeting with CCP leader Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC Summit. For global investors, understanding the strategic intent, negotiation focus, and potential outcomes of Trump's Asia trip will be key to predicting future market trends, seizing investment opportunities, and managing geopolitical risks. According to the information released so far, Trump's Asia trip has a tight schedule and a clear purpose: to maximize his diplomatic influence and negotiation results in a short period of time. First stop, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Trump attended the 47th ASEAN Summit and related meetings where he had bilateral and multilateral talks with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and other Asian leaders. In Malaysia, Trump accomplished several major objectives. First, he personally hosted and witnessed the signing of an expanded ceasefire agreement between Thailand and Cambodia, aimed at ending border conflicts. The agreement was brokered under Trump's direct mediation. The White House described it as a major global diplomatic achievement, helping Trump shape his image as a global peacemaker. Second, he advanced a diversified supply chain strategy, one of the top priorities of this trip. During his participation at the ASEAN Summit, several major agreements were signed in rapid succession. Malaysia announced that it would lift its export restrictions on rare earths to the United States. Around 16.1 million tons of rare earth reserves will now be supplied directly to the U.S., and the two countries will jointly build a processing facility. Malaysia also agreed to purchase 30 American-made aircraft, with an option to buy 30 more later, along with semiconductor equipment, aerospace parts, and data center technologies. The total deal is valued at $150 billion US. 2. Thailand. Thailand also showed strong willingness to cooperate with the U.S. On tariffs, Thailand pledged to remove nearly 99% of trade barriers on American goods. This policy covers almost all industrial products, food, and agricultural goods. Thailand also announced an $18.8 billion purchase of 80 American aircraft. Observers say the Thai government's move signals a major show of financial support for the United States. 3. Vietnam. Under the new agreement with Vietnam, the U.S. will keep a 20% tariff on Vietnamese goods, but lift tariffs on some specific products. Vietnam promised to grant preferential access to nearly all American goods. Vietnam Airlines agreed to buy 50 Boeing planes worth more than $8 billion, while Vietnamese companies will import over $2.9 billion worth of U.S. agricultural products. These moves will significantly reduce the $123 billion trade deficit between the two countries. 4. Cambodia. Cambodia has canceled all tariffs on U.S. imports and agreed to simplify and lower its licensing and regulatory requirements for imported goods. Second stop, Tokyo, Japan. On October 27th, President Trump arrived in Tokyo, where he was received with the highest honors from Japan's royal family. At around 5 p.m. local time, Air Force One landed at Haneda Airport. Wearing a blue suit and a gold tie, President Trump stepped off the plane and shook hands with Japanese and American officials waiting to greet him, including Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary and the commander of U.S. Forces Japan. Soon after, Trump visited the Imperial Palace in Tokyo to meet Emperor Naruhito. He became the first foreign leader to meet the emperor since Naruhito's ascension to the throne in 2019. On October 28th, Trump held his first summit with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi in Tokyo. As Japan's first female prime minister, her meeting with Trump was described by many as a historical moment. At their joint press conference, Takaichi expressed her willingness to make Japan-US relations even stronger and more prosperous, hoping to work with President Trump to open a new golden era in the alliance between the two countries and to promote peace and stability in the world. Trump praised her as a strong and decisive leader, saying that Japan is one of America's closest and most reliable allies. He emphasized that the alliance between the two countries is now at its strongest point ever. According to Bloomberg, Trump told Takaichi during their meeting, "Anything I can do to help Japan, we will be there. We are an ally at the strongest level." He added, "Everything I know from Shinzo and others, you will be one of the great prime ministers." The two leaders focused their talks on trade, security, and supply chain issues, discussing ways to enhance supply chain resilience and diversification to reduce dependence on a single country. Japan committed to investing $550 billion into U.S. projects. The biggest achievement of the summit was the signing of the Rare Earth and Critical Mineral Supply Chain Cooperation Framework Agreement. The agreement covers resource extraction, processing, and stockpile coordination to ensure the material security for industries like electric vehicles and semiconductors, reducing reliance on China's supply chains. Trump emphasized during the meeting that this agreement would ensure that the free world will no longer rely on a single country for supplies. Takaichi stated that Japan and the U.S. would lead the world in de-risking their industrial chains. On security issues, Takaichi committed to advancing Japan's defense spending target, originally set to reach 2% of GDP by the 2027 fiscal year to the current fiscal year. Japan's previous defense spending ratio was around 1.8%. Takaichi's government highlighted that achieving this target earlier is meant to counter the expansion of Chinese military power and tensions in the Taiwan Strait. This aligns with the broader defense strategy of the U.S.-Japan alliance. Trump fully supported this move, praising Japan's intent to buy more U.S. defense equipment. Many believe that Takaichi will continue the foreign policy pace set by the late former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, actively pushing pro-U.S. diplomacy. During Abe's tenure, he and Trump often played golf together, using personal interactions to strengthen the relationship. On the morning of the 28th, Takaichi gifted Trump a golf putter that had been used by Abe, along with a signed golf bag from Japan's renowned golfer Hideki Matsuyama. Takaichi said the gift symbolized the continuation of trust and friendship between the two countries, and reflected her respect for Abe's diplomatic legacy. Third stop, Gyeongju, South Korea. President Trump will attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Busan, South Korea on October 30th. There, he will hold a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. South Korea's promised $350 billion investment in the U.S. will serve as Trump's strongest leverage. The biggest point of contention between the U.S. and South Korea is not whether they will fulfill this commitment, but how it will be carried out. The core of the dispute revolves around the structure and timeline of the funding, reflecting the distinct economic priorities and political boundaries of both nations. The U.S. has made its position clear, demanding a significant upfront cash commitment from South Korea. The U.S. may also use the $550 billion investment deal with Japan as a model to pressure South Korea. South Korea's investment agreement gives Trump significant role in the negotiations, the mutual security commitments between the two countries, but also to reshape their economic relationship and ensure supply chain security with key Asian allies. In April this year, the Chinese government requested that South Korean companies not export products containing Chinese rare earth minerals to U.S. defense companies. According to South Korea's economic news, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce sent a letter to South Korean companies, urging them not to export materials like transformers, batteries, displays, electric vehicles, aerospace, and medical equipment that contain critical rare earth minerals. Despite the pressure from China, South Korea stood firm under Trump's strong leadership. The U.S. and South Korea achieved a breakthrough in the cooperation on critical minerals. In September, a U.S. resource company announced a long-term partnership with South Korea's POSCO, aiming to develop a rare earth material supply chain. By 2030, they plan to provide over 3,000 tons of high-purity rare earth oxides annually. This partnership not only includes a joint supply group for domestic and international rare earth materials, but also combines the separation and refining technologies from the U.S. company ReElement and POSCO's extensive experience in the automotive and industrial supply chains. The goal is to establish a stable rare earth material supply chain. This initiative is seen as a significant step in reshaping the global critical minerals landscape. It will help localize innovative refining capabilities, reduce reliance on non-local processing, and provide long-term supply security for industries that drive economic growth and national security. During his visit to South Korea, President Trump is expected to use all available means to further strengthen the strategic cooperation with South Korea on critical mineral supplies. Trump will then meet with Xi Jinping in his first face-to-face meeting since returning to the White House. This will be the final stop of his trip. On October 26th, the U.S. and China held their fifth round of face-to-face trade talks since May in Kuala Lumpur. The U.S. delegation was led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. The Chinese side was represented by Vice Premier He Lifeng and Senior Trade Negotiator Li Changgang. The main purpose of this important meeting was to prepare for the upcoming summit between President Trump and President Xi. The two sides focused on 6 main areas of dispute. 1. Rare earths. China has significantly expanded its rare earth export controls, adding 5 new elements to the restricted list and imposing additional checks on semiconductor users. Foreign manufacturers using Chinese rare earth materials must now comply with new regulations. China's weaponization of rare earths has prompted Western countries to take measures to reduce reliance on China. After the talks on October 26, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Beijing would delay the implementation of the expanded licensing system by 1 year and would review the system again. 2. Soybeans and other agricultural products. Bessent noted that during the trade war, China drastically reduced its soybean purchases from the U.S., nearly to zero. Beijing had used American farmers as leverage to pressure Trump. However, after the trade talks, he believed the concerns have been addressed. He told NBC that China would significantly purchase U.S. soybeans under the proposed trade agreement framework. Bessent, who is himself a soybean farmer, expressed empathy for the difficulties faced by growers. In 2023 and 2024, China bought over half of American soybeans. U.S. soybean exports to China peaked in 2022, reaching nearly $18 billion. Beijing's hostility towards Trump had been evident in its use of soybeans as leverage. 3. Fentanyl. The Trump administration imposed a 20% punitive tariff on Chinese imports of fentanyl-related products in February, due to Beijing's failure to curb the flow of precursor chemicals used to produce fentanyl. In the U.S., fentanyl has contributed to nearly 450,000 overdose deaths. Despite a trade truce reached earlier, the fentanyl tariffs remain in place. The issue has remained deadlocked for months, and it was also raised during the Kuala Lumpur talks. 4. Shipping and ports. The U.S. has imposed port fees on Chinese companies that build, own, or operate vessels. Trump stated that this move was aimed at revitalizing the U.S. shipbuilding industry. In response, Beijing has also imposed port fees on U.S. vessels that are owned, operated, built by, or fly the U.S. flag. And it has sanctioned 5 subsidiaries of South Korea's Hyundai Heavy Industries Group that are linked with the U.S. 5. TikTok. On Sunday, Bessent stated that both sides have reached a final agreement on TikTok, and all details are now finalized. 6. Tariffs. During the U.S.-China talks on the 26th, both sides discussed extending the suspension of the U.S. tariffs on China, which is currently set at 55%. The suspension was originally scheduled to end on November 10th. Trump had previously announced that he would impose a 100% tariff on Chinese goods starting November 1st in retaliation for China's expanded rare earth export controls. However, Bessent said that after the weekend talks, this measure is no longer being considered. Bessent explained, President Trump gave me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth export controls, so I think we have averted that, so that the tariffs can be averted. Analysts believe that Trump's itinerary for this Asia trip is not just a simple geographical tour, but a carefully designed strategic combination, reflecting his negotiation style of pressure from the inside layer by layer. The sequence of the trip itself is a strategic design. Trump chose to start with Southeast Asia, hoping that by hosting the signing of the Thailand-Cambodia peace agreement in Kuala Lumpur and reaching a series of trade agreements with Southeast Asian countries, he would send several key signals, particularly to Beijing. 1. The U.S. is fully capable of playing the role of a regional peace stabilizer. 2. The U.S. is actively building a diversified supply chain network that does not rely on China. This series of diplomatic achievements sets the stage for his visits to Japan and South Korea, his core allies, and helps signal that America is back. Although Trump attended 2 major summits, ASEAN and APEC, his true strategic focus was on conducting efficient bilateral talks at these events. The multilateral summits provided a good platform for him to meet with the leaders of all key regional countries in just a few days, bringing his bilateral agenda to the global media spotlight. This strategy reflects the Trump administration's serious skepticism towards opaque multilateral cooperation and its belief that direct bilateral deals are the best way to maximize U.S. interests. This means that the market's attention will focus on the outcome of Trump's bilateral talks with leaders like Anwar Ibrahim, Sanae Takeichi, Lee Jae-myung, and Xi Jinping, rather than the often vague joint communiques issued at the end of the summits. Simply put, every move President Trump has made before meeting the Chinese leader was part of his effort to reshape East Asia's supply chains and push them away from China. His ultimate goal was to strip his opponent of as much leverage as possible before sitting down with Xi Jinping. Analysts say that President Trump loves peace, but he is also a true fighter. He understands Sun Tzu's art of war and knows exactly how to defeat his opponent. Earlier, Trump's attitude towards meeting Xi has shifted several times. Many thought this was due to his mood or Beijing's changing stance, but in reality, Trump wanted to make sure he knew who exactly he would be meeting in the end. When Trump learned that the CCP's fourth plenary session had reached a tense internal balance, with Xi still remaining as the face of the regime, he finally confirmed the meeting. Trump understood one thing clearly: no matter who represents China in the negotiations, as long as that person represents the CCP, they will always stand as America's adversary. To him, it doesn't matter who comes to the table. His target is the Chinese Communist Party. Trump's trip across Asia marked the beginning of an economic counteroffensive against the CCP, fighting back with the same tactics once used against America. It also sent a powerful message to the world: the leader has returned and America is back on top.